if saying no to everyone else was actually saying yes to yourself? What if the boundaries that you've been afraid to set are the very things that will set you free? Well, hey, my beautiful people, welcome back to the Season of Self-Love Podcast. It's your girlie goddess, Nyomi Banks, and I'm so glad that you are here with me for this Wisdom Wednesday. Well, this March, our focus is on reclaiming your boundaries, learning how to say yes to ourselves and release people-pleasing, and finally take up space without apology. And today's guest is living proof that it's never too late to choose yourself and set healthy boundaries and become the person that you are always meant to be. Because here's the thing, y'all, boundaries aren't walls. Boundaries are love. And when you learn how to honor them, everything changes. So let me welcome you properly to the show. Welcome to the Season of Self-Love Podcast, the season of healing intentionally. I am your host, Nyomi Banks, and I am so glad that you are here. This season, we are slowing down to go deeper. Every Monday and Wednesday, we're creating a space of intentional healing, authentic conversations, and the kind of self-love that transforms from the inside out. This podcast is brought to you by Ask Nyomi and Elevate Me Self-Discovery, where we believe that loving yourself intentionally is the foundation of true transformation. So whether you're on your own journey of rebirth, navigating life transitions, or simply choosing yourself, this is your safe space. So get comfy, grab your favorite beverage, and let's heal together intentionally, because you deserve to embrace that beautiful person that you are. Now let's get started. Well, all right, my beautiful people. Well, today I am joined by Ms. Tracy Smith. She's an author, researcher, and a storyteller. And her memoir, The Purpose of Getting Lost, it follows her journey from burnout and self-abandonment to deep self-trust, solo adventure, and unapologetic belonging. Tracy's story is honest, relatable, and a powerful invitation to anyone who is ready to reclaim their boundaries and their life. Well, Tracy, welcome to the Season of Self-Love. I am so grateful that you are here.
All righty. Thank you, Goddess Nyomi, for having me. I'm so excited.
I am too, girl, and I love when people call me Goddess Nyomi.
That was like one of the best introductions I've ever heard. Let me just tell you, it put me, and I could see my head just being like, yes, this girl knows, this like person knows me. She knows what I'm talking about. It was perfect. I love it.
Thank you. And I love reading, your whole profile and everything like that. And I just knew that you would be so perfect. This year for me is all about reclaiming unashamed. And I thought it would be so perfect right here, especially because I talk about boundaries a lot. Even when we go into this healing journey of ours that we're going through, that's one thing that we learn is about boundaries. But we're going to get into all of that, coming forward, because right now, before we dive into this conversation, I really want to do something that we always do, and that's to ground ourselves, because that's something that we do here every episode here. It's a 60-minute guided meditation just to set the intentions for this conversation. So my beautiful people, wherever you are right now, if you would just take a moment to just close your eyes if you can and just get real comfortable. All right, my beautiful souls, wherever you are and whatever you are doing, I want you to just pause with me for a moment. I want you to put both feet on the floor, and I want you to relax your shoulders and take a deep breath in through your nose and slowly release through your mouth. Now I want you to place one hand onto your heart. Now I want you to say quietly to yourself, and I want you to repeat after me. I am worthy of boundaries. Now inhale. Now exhale. Now I want you to say quietly to yourself, I release people-pleasing. I release guilt. I release the need to make everyone comfortable at my own expense. Now one more deep breath in. Now release. Now say, my no is sacred. My yes is sacred. I choose myself. I am reclaimed and I am unashamed. And when you are ready, gently open your eyes. All right, my beautiful people. Again, thank you for just sharing that space with me as well as you too, Tracy. So let's dive
Thank you.
right in. This month, this March, our theme is reclaiming your boundaries. So I want to start by asking you this: what does reclaiming your boundaries mean to you now? And how did you first realize that you needed them?
Yeah, like I don't think I knew that I needed them until I started traveling. So let's like starting there, like, I think we become whomever we are, and we're this person, we're mom, we're employee, we're student, we're sister, we're whomever. And then I think we lose ourselves in
Mm,
all of these identities, and we're just kind of like, okay, yes, I could take you here. Oh, you need me to pick you up at 1 a.m.? Great, I'm here, I'm picking you up. Oh, you need me to cook dinner? Oh, forget I have a meeting. It's okay, I can do both, right? And that's the life I lived.
yeah.
So for, the last for sure 30 years, that's the life I've been living. But even before that, I knew that I was just people pleasing, always, even as a teenager, saying, okay, you need something, whatever you need. So when I started traveling 3.5 years ago, I went on this first trip, and I was still people pleasing. Like I was
Mm,
still kind of saying like, okay, let me make sure my son who was in high school, okay, let me make sure he's got some meals. I prep some meals for him, right? Let
right.
me make sure he knows where he can find this. Let me make sure he knows who to call, when to call, how to call, like all of that stuff. But it wasn't until I went on this trip. I had actually booked it in early 2024,
Mm-hmm.
and it was for September 2024. And I booked this trip to go to Southeast Asia. I was going to Indonesia, Malaysia, and back to Vietnam. And I told my kids, it was like March. My youngest son was graduating from high school that year. And I said, oh, I'm going away in September. I'm going away for a month. I'm going. I'm so excited. I booked this trip. And they're like, Mom, who's going to watch the dog? And I was like, dang, I don't know. I was like, wait, where? And then it started to hit me. Oh man, like you're not going to be here. You're not going to be here. And rather than me saying, oh, let me cancel this trip because I got to be responsible for all this other stuff, I basically was like, let's figure it out. But not in a let's figure it out where I felt like I wasn't getting something, because I ended up doing like house sitters. I found some people online, and my kids were like, you're going to let strangers stay at our house? And I
Mm-hmm.
was like, yeah, I'm going on my trip. Strangers can stay at the house. They can take everything from my house if they want to. I don't care. I have insurance, but I'm going on my trip. And that
Right.
was the first real moment. That had to have been like March of 2024. So I'd been traveling for about a year and a half. That was the first real moment where I was like, this is for me. I'm doing this, and I don't really care. I didn't care about work. I didn't care about the kids. I didn't care about anything. I was like, this is a time I'm saying yes to myself. And and every since I've been learning, I've been figuring it out along the ways, how do I say yes to myself?
Right, right. The one thing what when I was reading, part of your profile is that you talk about self-abandonment, even within the people pleasing. And I want to talk about that. So how did your people pleasing and self-abandonment, you talked about that, but how does it show up in your life, and what did it cost you? Because I think people need to understand the real price of saying yes when you really mean no. And I
It,
know you described it a little bit, but how does
Mhm.
it really show up in your life
Yeah.
of it?
No, oh my God, it's so true. So like I remember in 2012, right? Christmas of 2012, I was just becoming separated from my now ex-husband. And we were going to Disney. I planned a trip to Disney World with my kids. My kids were at the time, so maybe like 11, 8 and 7 or something like that. So they were still young. And I planned a trip to Disney World. And I kid you not, I took my computer with me. And every night we would get back, we would spend the day at the parks. And while we're at the park, you're checking emails and trying to get some work done and doing whatever. But then every night we'd get back to the room and the kids would kind of be like relaxed, watching something or whatever. And I'd pull out my computer and I would be answering emails. And there were other times too. Like I remember actually a time even more recently where I drove to go see my daughter at school, at college. And I took my younger son with me. And so this was in 2024, right around the time I had booked that trip. Yeah, 2024. And I took my younger son with me and I got on a call and it was all work. And I spent I spent like an hour and a half. Sorry, the drive was like 4 hours. I spent like an hour and a half on a call with this person. Well, I'm supposed to be driving with my son to go visit my daughter for mom's weekend. And the worst part is I'm trying to make everything right on this call. Like this woman and I, we're like butting heads. It's getting tense. I'm trying to make everything right. And after an hour and a half, after my son's like, Mom, you just spent all that time on a call. Like he was like, that was so rude. And he's telling me all this stuff. And he's right. It was so rude. That woman ended up hanging up on me. So like I lost on both sides, right? I lost because my coworker hung up on me and I felt like crud all weekend long, like replaying the conversation in my head and trying to think, what could I have done differently? Feeling guilty for leaving. Like the guilt I felt to leave, to go be with my daughter was horrible. And then my son feeling guilty because I was on the call. And then for like part of the time when we had first gotten there, I sat in the car waiting to finish this phone call, and then we were late going out to dinner. So then I felt guilty with my daughter and my son because I wasn't ready to do to be with them.
Be
I
a
wasn't
mother
ready.
and be in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it was all because like I didn't want this woman at work to be mad at me. And it didn't matter because at the end she was still mad at me. And then now I've got my kids upset with me and I got this woman at work mad at me. And so I think that like when we people please, like for me, when I'm people pleasing, like I'm just sacrificing like the Disney trip, right? Like I wanted to be with my kids, but instead here I am trying to answer work stuff and trying to deal with work stuff and they don't appreciate it, right? Like they I mean, you're just another cog. So you could be anybody. And then at the end of the day, I'm not making anybody happy. And my stomach is in knots. My head is like throbbing. I mean, like I have, Nyomi, I could give you like 20 examples off the top of my head where I've done stuff like this, right? Where I'm like, oh, okay, you need me for work. I had surgery. And I'm not even joking. That night, I was responding to messages via voice while I'm coming off of the medicine from the surgery. My arm completely nerve blocked. I can't even use it. So I think the cost is like our mental health on top of physical health, right? Because who knows if my arm healed properly because I started using it right away, know? And I think that we forget that the saying yes to people affects us even more deeply than it affects the people that if we just told them no in the first place, I mean, yeah, it's hard. I have, too many. We all do, right? Too many examples of that.
And as you were speaking, I resonated with that so much, because, as mothers, you wear so many different hats. You wear so many different hats, especially if I'm an entrepreneur. So I have my own business, but not only that, but I'm a caregiver to my mom as well. So I'm a wife, I have children, so there's so many different things as you. And it is one thing is that you not only are you abandoning yourself, but you also, just that conversation or that scenery of you being in the car with your son and you're trying to conduct business, you also in that guiltness of abandoning them, and you're showing you're giving them a part of oh my God, of that abandonment that you've given yourself. Right. And so that weighs on you a lot, and that weighs on parents a lot, especially when it comes to mothers, because we are supposed to be nurturing. You know what I'm saying? That's we are supposed to be. And so when we're not able to teach them how to set the boundaries, we kind of set them up for failure.
Yeah. I would say that to I say that to myself sometimes. Like I'm like, I don't know what I taught them about like my daughter
Hmm.
specifically. Like I don't know what I taught her about being valued, whether it's about being valued in romantic relationships or being valued by friends or at work. Like what have I taught her that it's okay for me just to do everything for everybody and say, it's okay. Mom doesn't need to do this. I remember when I first got divorced and I started dating this guy and he loved my kids and, you know, uh, he really loved them a lot.
Hmm.
But there were times where I would have to say to him, I'd be like, you know what? I know we had plans, but I got to change them because my kids need me tonight and my kids here. So there's always like trying to, even then I was trying to please my kids, maybe trying to please my ex-husband because I didn't want him to be mad at me where if I was like, well, no, I can't take the kids because, X, Y, and Z, but I didn't want the kids to be upset with me to be like, um, no, what do you mean you're going to go out tonight? You should be spending time with us for home or, so it was all these things. And then the boyfriend to say, oh, what do you mean? Like you have to go spend time with your kids. And you're just constantly juggling and trying to figure out, you're like robbing Peter to pay Paul. But
Yeah.
instead of that financial sense, I'm just doing it in an emotional, you're doing it in an emotional sense. And it's not healthy. It's just not healthy, even a little bit.
No. So for you, what was the turning point for you? What was that that pushed you to finally choose yourself and start setting boundaries? Because I think a lot of people, they're waiting for that permission. Like
Yeah.
I want them to hear that story because I believe we all are at that moment was like, can I get a
Yeah.
permission to choose myself where it don't feel selfish? And if it do, then so goddamn what? No.
Yeah. So no, so I think there's two pieces to it, right? Because I don't think you can just jump. I I think that it might seem like we're just jumping into saying yes to
Yeah.
ourselves, but it's because we're not recognizing that we're taking those little yes to ourselves, right? And
Yes.
so, like, sometimes you're saying that yes to yourself, and it might be, you know what? I'm going to go for a walk instead of mopping the kitchen floor right now. I mean, that's a yes to yourself, right? Or I'm going to read this book instead of, I don't know, doing dishes or texting somebody back, right? So
Mhm.
like these are really small yeses, and I think we women must learn to do that. Like I just think, and it's one small one, so just do like a little bitty one every day. Just try to do like a little bitty one. And the thing is I didn't realize I had been planning and doing those. So then if you allow yourself to sit back and you want to take that really big one, maybe take an inventory of like, okay, when do I do this? Do I say sometimes, no, I'm going to read a book right now instead of doing X, Y, and Z or whatever. And then this big one comes when I just jumped in with I jumped in with not even just my 2 feet. I mean, I like dove in. I was like, I'm going on this trip. The very first trip I went on, and I was like, my friends invited me, and I kind of I just did it. Like I just did it. Like you can't allow yourself to think about it sometimes,
Yeah.
right? Like when you're trying to get to that big spot, you almost just have to do it and then get yourself hyped up and don't you just can't let yourself talk yourself out of it because we do that, right? We'll talk ourselves out of like doing something that we've said yes to. So then I did this really big trip and I came back and I was like, okay, I didn't know I was changed. I was kind of like,
Mhm.
okay, that was cool. I went on this 3-week trip. I really loved it. I want to do some more. But I didn't really know it was about saying yes to myself. I just knew I kind of loved the experience.
Mhm.
So then I went on this other trip. And when that trip came up, I found myself apologizing to somebody when I came back. Well, kind of like while I was on it. And then when I came back, I found myself apologizing for going, apologizing maybe for not like giving all the details of what I was doing, even though I didn't really feel like I needed to. So then after that, I was like, no, Tracy, you didn't do anything wrong. Like, I'm like, there's self-talk nonstop. I'm self-talking myself. So then I get through it. So then as time is going, every time I'm taking like a few more steps, a few bigger steps. Next thing you know, March of 2023, I'll never forget because it was the end, it was the beginning of the ending of a relationship I had been in. In March of 2023, I booked a flight. I booked it to Southeast Asia. It was my first trip there. I was on Google at like midnight. No good comes from being on Google at midnight, let me just tell you. But I was on Google at midnight and I saw this flight and I was like, do it. Just do it. Just do it. And I did it. I booked it. And then I didn't tell the person I was with for 3 days and he was really, really upset with me. And I said, I'm sorry. Like, I'm sorry you're upset with me, but I'm going on this trip. Here are the reasons I didn't tell you, and I'm going. And then that was it. And then I didn't let him continue to try to have this discussion with me or try to be mad at me or try to whatever. Ultimately, I ended the relationship because he couldn't get over it. But that's where then that last part of it, because I was like, I'm not going to stay in a relationship where I have to tell somebody that, or that where I have to like get permission from somebody to do something. And this isn't a husband, right? Like this isn't like sharing finances. This is like a boyfriend. So for me, I was like, I'm going to do this. I'm not going to apologize. I will say I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner, because I was sorry I didn't tell him sooner. But after that, I just did it. And then I kept trying just to make strides. So then it got to that trip in spring of 2024 where I just completely forgot I had responsibilities at home when I said yes to myself. Now I'm at a point, believe it or not, you almost come full circle. And so now I know how to choose when I want to say yes to myself versus when I'll say yes to somebody else and be okay with like saying no to myself in favor of them. So I think you just have to take inventory of those steps you're taking. And then every time you're just trying to step a little further than the last time that you took that step. That's
Just
all
take
you're doing.
each time that you move, you take a bigger and bigger step.
Yeah, just every time.
Yeah. Now throughout this, you went from step to traveling, and now I know like I want to talk about this solo trip that played a big role in your journey. So how
Mhm.
did that solo trip help you to reconnect with your own voice and needs? And what did you discover about yourself when you were alone?
So most of my trips ended up being solo because I would find that I wanted to move at my own speed. I didn't want to apologize for anybody for wanting to spend more time at a museum or less time somewhere else. I didn't want to defend taking a 2-hour nap in the middle of the day. I wanted to eat dinner whenever I wanted to, right? So what was happening on those trips, and the very first trip I took was like solo kind of travel agent, and then a group trip. And the group trip, the thing that I realized, this is my very first trip, I realized that I needed some space, right? So we were on this bus for a couple of days. We had been going and going and going. And I don't know, maybe like by day 5, I told like the tour leader, I was like, I need to do my own thing today. I need space. I just need to kind of say yes to myself in that moment. And so he said, okay, you do your thing and we're going to go do our thing. And I was 100% okay with that. So then every trip I kept taking after that, all the way up to probably the biggest one that I've taken would have been the one I took in September of 2024, where I was like just kind of doing my own thing. I went to Vietnam and I went to Malaysia and Indonesia. And I had some pieces that I was interacting with other people, but that trip was just me every day deciding when I wanted to wake up, when I wanted to eat, where I wanted to stay, how I wanted to get around, what I wanted to see. And I came back from it and basically went on like realized I couldn't say keep my job anymore. I realized I had to leave that job because at that point the job felt so constricting to me that I couldn't be there. I couldn't be there anymore. Because I realized all the people pleasing that I was doing after that trip. When I went back and I was like, oh, I was sick to my stomach, I had migraines, and I was like, I can't do this anymore. So then I ended up quitting that job. Just a few months down the road is when I ended up quitting.
Mm. You know what's so interesting is that because you did a lot of moving, you did a lot of
Mhm.
moving around from, from the relationship, from even, you're getting divorced, and then just from
Mhm.
doing a lot of traveling. And I guess one of my questions is a lot of times we, even with setting boundaries, a lot of times we either set up boundaries in through fear or through self-love. And I want our listeners to know in because you had to know now you know what's the
Right.
difference between setting boundaries through fear or through self-love. Can you let the audience know what's the difference between those boundaries when you set it from fear or set it boundaries set from self-love? Because I think people struggle with this a lot because they want to set them boundaries, but they don't want to do it from a place of anger or fear. Because
Right.
like even when you were traveling, even when you didn't tell your boyfriend and waited for like 3 or 4 days to tell him, it was like you kind of like that was more of a fear based than
Mhm.
more of a self-love space. Does that make sense?
Yeah, oh yeah, for sure.
Mhm.
Absolutely. No, I think that that's really uh, relevant you saying that, because when I think about it, like, so I've spent my entire life wanting to belong, right? Like
Mhm.
my entire life just trying to fit in with people, right? And every time I'm rejected or every time I'm not fitting in, my you're hearing you're wondering why, right? So you're playing conversations over and over in your head, and you're kind of like, why didn't they like me? What was wrong with me? Why, like, what could I have done differently? What could I have said differently? And this went on for even after I started traveling. This kind of this persisted a lot. And so what ended up happening, especially as I wrote this book, I started to think about, like, why do I love traveling? And you mentioned like being on moving and going. And so I realized that self-acceptance is because when I travel, I can be me. Like
Mm.
there's nobody judging me. There is nobody saying to me, "Oh, look at that woman." Or, well, maybe they are saying it, but I don't care because I'm never going to see them again. I'm never going to interact with them again. So like some, you'll be like, "Oh, I just ate, I don't know, maybe I ate that food wrong, or I slurped my soup, or maybe I said something stupid," because I'm prone to saying stupid things. So like, but when you're traveling, no, nobody knows you. Like you operate in this complete vein of self-acceptance. It's just completely self, and that's the best way. I'm so glad you used that word, because
Mhm.
I don't know if I thought about it like that. Like I thought about it like I'm operating in anonymity and nobody knows me and there's no expectations. But
Mhm.
the reality is I'm still me. I
Mhm.
haven't changed. So instead, what I've done when I'm traveling is I've accepted that being me is enough.
Mhm.
Whoever, however, whatever that looks like, loud voice, quiet sitting at the bar, like I said, saying dumb things, slurping my food, touching everything, because I like to touch textiles. So I love to walk through markets and touch textiles, but it's just me. And I think that that's a really important way to think about it. And I don't know. The truth is, I'm not sure I knew when that happened. I
Yeah.
think like all of a sudden I was like, I want to travel because I know how to love myself when I'm traveling.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, I want to
Mm.
be traveling. But it carries over. Don't get it, it 100% carries over, because traveling and learning to love myself and learning to be okay with myself. So it definitely happened sooner than I thought it did, because when I broke up with that boyfriend, so I ended up breaking up with him about a year into my travels. And at first I didn't know, when I broke up with him, I didn't really know why. I couldn't really articulate, like, why am I breaking up with you? Why does this feel okay? And it wasn't until like maybe even 6 months after that that I finally realized, I was like, I can make myself happy now. Like,
Mm,
I didn't know if I could do that before, and I was kind of using, like, people pleasing. I was using boyfriends and taking care of my kids and being the work person who can answer all the questions as the way to validate
mhm.
me, and that made me happy, right? Like, "Oh, Tracy's good, she can do this. Oh, she's got a boyfriend, she's got this, her kids are happy." So then I felt validated. But when I broke up with him, and then a few months, maybe 6 months after I broke up with him, I realized I was like, "No, I'm making myself happy now.
Yeah.
I don't need anybody to do that." And so then it's now carried over because, I haven't really been in a relationship since then. And I'm okay with that. Like
Yeah.
and it's not because I'm traveling all over, because frankly, I mean, I only since my last trip, I've only been on one trip since June. And that was I went for a month to Africa. So it's not like I've been on all these trips or anything the way I was before. It's more that I've learned to kind of just be with myself
Yeah.
and to love the person that I was with, to love
Yeah.
that person.
Yeah. So it's more of you are enjoying yourself in your fullness, in your authenticity, in who
Yes.
you are, and not who someone looks for you to be for them. Does that make
Yes.
sense? Yeah.
Yes, that absolutely.
Yeah.
And don't get me wrong, like I said, there are still, we all have our moments, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
Um, there are still some times when you're like, you you find yourselves, and that you find yourselves falling back into either the people pleasing. But what I found for myself is it's fewer and fewer times that I'm doing that, right? So more often than not, I'm I'm not doing that. I'm saying, no, this is what I'm going to do.
Yeah.
This is who I'm going to be. And then sometimes I'll cook dinner for the kids at night when we're home and we're both here together in Chicago. I'm like cook dinner with them for them then. But more often than not, I'm saying, no, you guys can take care of yourself. You can cook your own dinner. No, I'm not going to make you ramen or scrambled eggs like, they want me to make them. But I think it's more like I'm saying yes on my terms,
Yeah.
right? Like a really good example is um I was supposed to go to Guatemala in December, and I was really super excited about it. My kids were going to do their own thing. Well, their plans changed, and my daughter, she said, we should go somewhere for New Year's. And I was like, well, I already kind of have plans. I was really excited about them or whatever. And ultimately, I canceled my plans to Guatemala. And I decided to go on this small trip with my daughter, and my older son came, and a friend of mine. And I don't look at that as necessarily saying no to myself. I looked at that as saying yes to my daughter, yes to them, because like here, I chose it and I feel good. I feel good about having chosen it.
Yeah. Yeah.
Does
No,
that
that
make,
makes sense. Yeah, that makes
yeah.
sense. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, so now let's talk about the practical side of all of this. How do you practice boundaries with compassion? Especially when
Ooh.
family or the old version of yourself, what you said when you say yes to everything, because I think that's where people get stuck. And I love how you explained about not saying no to yourself, but saying yes to your daughter. How
Hmm.
can that show up for people, or better yet, how can you use that in a practical form? Explain that.
Yeah, I think that you know, I live in my head a lot. So for me, I'll have kind of like some internal dialogue, and sometimes I'm writing it down, sometimes I'm just thinking it through. Sometimes it's a conversation, like say with my daughter or something, to be like, okay, what do you really want and what makes the most sense? And I think that one, we have to be compassionate to ourselves, right? We have to understand that it's okay for us sometimes not to say yes to ourselves, right? It's okay for us to say yes to other people, and that's not a failure, right? That's not failure on my part. It's not failure on anybody's part. It's compassion for yourself to say, this time I give myself permission to say yes to somebody else, right? And it's a lot. Don't get me. There is a ton of self-talk involved in this, because you can't just like wake up and be like, I'm saying yes to myself today. Because if you do that, you're you're already practicing it,
Mm-hmm.
right? Like you're already living that life, and you don't need that's probably not the same as my experience, and that's probably not the person who's having my kind of experience. But for me, there's tons of self-talk. Sometimes, I'm thinking about it. Okay, Tracy, what's the best way for me to think about this? How do I want to think about this? It's not jumping hoops. It's just laying out all the reasons why maybe I should or shouldn't, and then giving myself permission to choose, because I remind myself at the end, I get to choose.
Yeah.
This is my choice. It's nobody else's. It is my choice. And then I think the other part of it is, you know, to the degree that you can, you really should be involving other people in some of those decisions, right? Like the people who really love you, and the people who care about you, and the people who won't judge you. My daughter was not going to judge me if
Yeah.
I said, no, you know what, Sophia, I'm going to go do this instead. She's not judging me. She's like, oh, okay, well, that kind of sucks. Love to spend time with you, but I get it.
Yeah.
But at the same time, she's also like, oh my God, I'm so excited that we're going to get to spend time together. Right. So I think it's having that conversation with them, with your loved ones, the people who understand you the most. I have an older brother, and I'll call him up, and I'll say to him, I'll be like, you know what, Grady, can you just help me talk this through? I need to understand what I'm about to do or what I'm thinking about. Like, I just need a little bit of help. And so we'll talk it through, and I'll tell him at the end, I'll be like, okay, this was helpful. Maybe I'm going to do what you say. Maybe I'm not going to do what you say. I'm not totally sure. But at the end of it, I listened to what he had to say, and then I made a decision. So I think I want, when listeners are like practicing compassion, I want them to compassion for themselves.
Yeah.
Give themselves permission to err, to fail at it, give themselves permission to change their mind,
Mhm.
to decide that no, I wanted to do this, but now I want to do that.
Yeah.
And just give yourself permission to kind of be this person of not just Tracy, mother, daughter, sister, employee, blah, 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 but as Tracy. Like,
Yeah.
I'm giving myself permission to be Tracy. And I
Yeah.
think that that's what we want listeners to remember, is that that's who they are. They're all of those things together.
Yeah. I love that you said that, because you're in the beginning, you're Tracy the human. And so I even
Mm-hmm.
love that you're checking in with just someone, a loved one that loves you. You know what
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying? Because sometimes you do need that person that, that they can just sit and listen without judgment, and could
Right.
be that ear that you need, because a lot of times we can be hard on ourselves, even with that self-talk. So you do need somebody who can say, well, you know what? I want to just give you another perspective, especially if you are respectful of their opinion, you know what I'm
Yes.
saying, or their say. And it can make you, oh, okay, that gives me another thought, instead of that critic, that inner critic that you have in your,
Right.
it gives you something else to think about. So I love that you say that. And even for our listeners, when she said that, did you hear the love that she said when she said her older brother that she respects, and that she know that will talk and that will take care of her heart? That's what you got to
Mm-hmm.
know, that someone's just taking care of your heart in there, and not for judgment with that one. But now I want to talk about guilt. I want to talk about, because that's a big
Mm-hmm.
one, that that women, especially people that's always people pleasing, they want to make sure that I am not letting anyone down. What advice do you have for women who feel guilty or selfish when they do start saying no, and how to shift that mindset?
Yeah, that's really, it's so hard. And man, there are still times when it's so hard, right? Like that trip to Guatemala initially, because I was like, oh, my kids are going to be home and I'm not going to be here, but they'll be here. And so I think that we have to reframe the conversation, right? Reframe it away from, I feel guilty because I want to say yes to myself. Reframe it back to, I'm giving myself permission to feel this way, right? So not only am I giving myself permission to say yes to myself, but I'm also giving myself permission to say no to somebody else or to something else, whatever that might be. And then it allows you kind of to take the guilt out of it, because you're saying, I'm allowed to do this. And guilt is when we don't believe we're allowed to do it, right? That's where guilt comes in. It's like, we're like, man, we made a mistake. We weren't allowed to do this. So I think that that's probably the biggest piece we can have, right? And for a while, I I would have a lot of guilt when I would first leave, or like kind of like into the time coming up to the trip. And I finally got to a point where it's less and less, because I'm taking these trips and I'm explaining to my kids, because it's for me, at the end of the day, the three people who matter the most to me are my three children. Like, right. I want to make sure they're taken care of. And so I'll say to myself, or I'll say to them, that guys, this is why I'm going. I realize you might not understand it. I realize that you might have a lot of questions for me. I'll answer all the questions that you have, but I'm making this choice to go.
Yeah.
And so I think that that's just how you have to learn to give yourself permission to do things. And I don't know how to do it other than you practice it, right? You have to practice. You have to take those baby steps to give yourself permission to leave some dishes in the sink. As I'm looking over at the kitchen sink and there's some dishes in there, you have to give yourself permission for that, right? You have to give yourself permission to go for a walk around the corner or around whatever, for whatever. Give yourself permission to go get your toenails painted. Like, whatever it might be, just give yourself permission and start learning to do that, because the more you start learning to do it, the bigger permissions you can give yourself without feeling guilty, right? Like, I think it starts when you have children, and they say to new moms, take a nap when the baby's napping. And most new moms, what do? No, they do dishes, they do laundry, they mop the floor. They're like trying to like do everything else. And the baby's napping and the baby wakes up and they're exhausted. And they didn't give themselves permission to leave those dishes in the daggone sink, because those dishes will still be there. It don't matter. They're going to be there, just maybe different dishes. It does not matter. So give yourself permission to leave the dishes in the sink.
Yeah. I like that. And so what I want to do right now is break it down, because I know I heard what you said, but I want to make it practical and make it so easy, because you've already given them a practical daily practice on what to do. And that was just to give permission. So if you can, just really easy, in case they miss that whole thing in there, what's one daily practice that can help them to stay connected to their truth and their needs? What do you do to check in with yourself? What would that be?
One daily practice that I do
Mm-hmm.
is I write like 4 sentences.
Okay.
I just write 4 sentences. I write 4 sentences about something that I'm noticing. So I don't really write about what I'm thinking or feeling, but I think you can write about what you're thinking or feeling. But for me, I notice something. I just kind of sit, I look around, I think about like the day before, I think about maybe something that might have been said to me, something that I saw, and I just write 4 sentences down. And then I sit with it and I'm like, huh, okay. And then I go about my business. That's it. It's a simple, because by doing that, I've said no to something else.
Mm-hmm.
I said no to doing the dishes in that moment. I said no to responding to a text message. I said no to some kid wanting me to make him scrambled eggs. In that moment, I've said yes to myself.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's it.
Yeah. So it sounds like you're kind of making yourself being aware in that moment, just being aware of being in that present moment.
Yes, I
Yeah.
am. I'm just trying to absorb it, kind of like your meditation at the
Yeah.
beginning, right? Like sit there, close your eyes, tell yourself, yes, I'm worthy. And it's almost the same thing, because I'm just sitting there and just thinking, just looking around. It's almost like I said, when I go to markets, I love to touch textiles. I just love to. It's almost like the same thing, that feeling I get as I walk through and I just touch them and kind of look at the colors or the fabrics and feel them. And I just wander. It's like I'm letting my mind wander. Takes, I don't know, 5 minutes a day. That's all it
Yeah.
does. 5 minutes a day.
Yeah. Yeah. All right, Tracy. Now, for someone that's listening right now who's kind of at the edge of their reinvention of themselves, who's ready to start reclaiming their boundaries in their life, what's the first boundary that they should honor this week? And what's one thing that they can do to start choosing themselves?
Oh, if they're at the beginning, I think the first boundary they need to do is reclaim is themselves as a whole person, as a human being. That's the very first thing you need to do. Because if you don't think that you have value
Mm,
in who you are as a person, outside of all of those titles that we carry,
yeah,
you're not going to ever be able to give yourself permission to say yes. You're never going to be able to leave the guilt behind because you're placing all those other roles and those identities on top of the one that really matters. The
yeah,
only one that matters for me is Tracy as a human being.
yeah.
And then everything else rolls up into it. And I tend to think that I don't know if I've reinvented myself. I've learned to coexist with all of those other people,
Mm,
right? So like Tracy, I'm not, mom hasn't gone anywhere, right? I'm still Tracy the mom. I'm still like, I cooked dinner for my college age kids who are home from break last night, right? I'm still Tracy mom, but Tracy the human being has learned how to coexist so that she's like, okay, I can cook you dinner right now, and then I'm going to go do my own thing afterwards. And I think they have to set that boundary first, that they have value.
I love that. Thank you. I love that. All right, Tracy. So let's do this quick lightning
All
round
right. Oh
before we
boy.
close out. Just some quick, honest answers. All right. You
All
ready?
right.
All
Oh
right, so
God, I'm
let's go.
scared, but I'm ready.
All right, here we go. All right. A belief that you had to let go of.
That I wasn't worthy.
Mm, good one. Next one. A boundary that changed your life.
That I did not need to have a romantic partner in order to be happy.
Ooh, powerful. All right, next one. A place that helped you to rediscover yourself.
Oh, Vietnam.
Ooh,
That's
all
my
right.
favorite place in the whole world, Vietnam.
All right, last one. Fill in the blank. Boundaries are.
Oh, this is tough. Boundaries are essential.
Mm,
Yeah.
I love that. Boundaries are essential. Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Mm,
Boundaries are essential.
beautiful.
Thank you.
Well, you know
This
what,
was
Tracy?
good.
Yeah, this was.
This was
Thank you
good.
for this
Thank
conversation.
you. I
It
loved
was
it. So thought
so,
provoking.
so needed. It was. And I know this is going to help so many different people. I know it is. And especially those who are ready to stop people pleasing and just start choosing themselves. So tell us, where can the listeners find your purpose of getting lost and connect with you? Where can they find you at?
Absolutely. So the purpose of Getting Lost is available both on Amazon and let's go to Amazon. So you go to Amazon and you can purchase it. The ebook is out now. The print version will be out next week. So if you want it, we'll be airing in March, right? So by then it'll be out on Amazon. You also can go to my website, tracysmithauthor.com, for more information about the book. If they want to read more of my writings in addition to the book, I'm on Substack at Tracy Smith PhD, and I've got lots of great articles there about finding ourselves and how to choose ourselves and living in anonymity while also living with community at the same time.
Beautiful. So she got more resources for you all to look at and see. It's so
Lots of them.
amazing, amazing. So actually, we're going to have all of those links that are going to be in our show notes. So make sure that you guys check them out, as well as grab the book. Connect with Tracy, y'all. Connect with
Yes, please
Tracy.
do.
And start doing the work. You know what I said. We give you all of these tools and the answer. Remember, use them, and start reclaiming your boundaries. Tracy, again, I want to thank you so much for just being here today and just for sharing your story with us and your honesty and your courage. And this is what self-love is all about. So do you have any final words for us here on the season of self-love, Miss Tracy?
You know, Say yes to yourself. Don't say yes to the dress. Say yes to yourself. That's it. Say yes to yourself.
I love it. All right, my beautiful people. I hope that this conversation has given you permission to choose yourself, to set boundaries, and to say no without guilt. I want you to take up the space without apology. Take it all up, because here's what I need you to know: that you are not selfish for having needs, that you are not demanding for having boundaries, and that you are not difficult for choosing yourself, because you are human. You are worthy, and you are deserving of your own love, your own care, and your own protection. And if you've been abandoning yourself, if you've been people pleasing, and if you've been saying yes when you mean no, this is your invitation to stop it. This is your permission to reclaim your boundaries and reclaim your life. It's never too late. You are not too far gone, and you can start choosing yourself today. So if this episode has resonated with you, I want you to share it with someone who needs to hear it. Leave a review, connect with Tracy. And as always, send me a message on Instagram, because I love hearing from you. So until next time, this is your girl, the goddess, Nyomi Banks. And as I always say, be good to one another and keep loving yourself first, so we can love others well. Have an amazing day. Have a good one. Thank you so much for joining me today on this journey of intentional healing. I hope that this conversation has filled your cup and reminded you of the beautiful and worthy person that you are. I want you to remember, healing isn't about rushing. It's about showing up for yourself with love and intention, one day at a time. So I'll see you back here Monday and Wednesday for another episode of the Season of Healing Intentionally, right here on the Season of Self-Love podcast. So until then, keep choosing you. And visit us at the seasonofselflovepodcast.com for show notes and resources. And remember to connect with me on Instagram at The Real Nyomi Banks. This has been brought to you by Ask Nyomi and Elevate Me Self-Discovery, because your healing matters. You are loved, you are worthy, and you are exactly where you need to be. Take care.